Good morning, building connections that Doral Talks. I'm your host, Betty Gonzalez, and today I have my good friend, Angela Venegas, and she's going to be talking about the gift that keeps on giving when you are actually married and you decide to purchase a home. She's going to tell us, like she always does, she's going to give us a great wealth of information about what to do, what not to do, and things that we just don't even think about until we just right in it, like so deep in it that it is too late. So the reason of this podcast is to give you information so that if you're planning to buy a house and if you have a marriage, let's say you have a strong marriage, you might have a weak marriage, but you might have a so-so marriage and you're planning to buy a house, that at least you have the information and you go with this into this purchase with your eyes wide open. Good morning, Angela, and welcome to our podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you on. So for the people that don't know you, even though you're like a pro here in our podcast, and I just love you for it, tell them a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're at, and what you're going to talk to us about.
Wow, thank you very much, Betty, for introducing me, and always thank you for having me. I love coming on and talking to you and your audience, especially because we both really love what we do. So we enjoy explaining the little nuances. So first, my name is Angela Venegas. I work with Partners Land Services. We are a title company, which means we represent the contract in a transaction. I've been working in the industry a very long time, and what we're talking about today is very near and dear to me. And one thing I want to say is you've always said thank you to me for telling you things that you may not have thought about or known, or scenarios that you may not have encountered yet. But on your last podcast, you enlightened us. You know, people go into a new home, they buy a brand new home in a brand new development, and it's great. And they don't think about, well, what happens when you sell? Because then, as you pointed out, you've got the model competing against you. Well, so now you're in a scenario where there are questions you didn't know to ask. And that leads us right into today's podcast.
I can't wait to hear what you have to tell us.
Well, with the title of The Gift That Keeps on Giving is so appropriate, especially Christmas time. You know, when you are married in Florida, you, Mr. and Mrs., are viewed as one person, and there is no legal separation in the state of Florida. You are married or you are divorced. That is it. You may not have seen your husband. You may not have seen your wife for 10 years. You have no idea where they are, but you are still married. And there are, of course, ways to be divorced, even when you don't know where your spouse is. But that's a process, definitely a process, not one you want to start in the middle of a real estate transaction. So let me start off by saying, if you own a property in Florida and you got married in Vegas, the laws of Florida apply when you're selling your home, which means if California is a property state, is not a property state, is a fault state, no fault state, none of it matters. If you got married in Disney World, in California, wherever, you are selling a property in Florida, and Florida that gives you that beautiful homestead protection that was put together to ensure that the spouses could not sell the family home without the other one knowing. Ding, 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 ding. Can't sell the home without the other spouse knowing. So if you are married in the state of Florida, not knowing where your spouse is, you're going to have a problem when you sell. And I say this with so much, I say it to be funny, but it's a very painful statement when you look at it. You can buy a house in the name of Mickey Mouse, but when it comes time to sell, Mickey Mouse has to appear. So if a husband and wife purchase a home together and they separate, if a single woman buys a home and gets married, if you get married, divorced, and remarried, anything that happens when you have homestead attached to your property will have to be dealt with 50% of the interest being given automatically to the spouse. I have come to closing and I have heard every heart-tugging story possible. I feel awful when I'm speaking to the children of elderly sellers who have said, my mom has never been able to introduce me to my dad. I don't know where he is. We don't know if he's alive. And I have to tell them that this is unfortunately the professional and the black and white part of my job where I have to take the emotion out of it, because unfortunately you can walk away from a marriage, but you cannot walk away from the interest in real estate. And when I say gift that keeps on giving, I'm going to put a bow on this for you. Even if a husband and wife are amicably separating and the wife gets a deed executed by the husband, a quitclaim deed, if they are still married, that deed will not be effective. You can file it in a record. And when you go to sell the house, they're going to require another signature because the divorce was not final. Homestead, as written in our Florida Constitution, which is what gives it its power, trumps that.
So I have a question. So you mentioned homestead and the house. So what if you didn't claim homestead? Does that same laws apply?
Now, if you did not claim a homestead, but you lived in your home, if that is your primary residence, and I say this politely, but if you were not educated enough to file for homestead, that still will apply, because anybody in the title industry giving an insurance policy, which is what we do, has to look at the reality and the risk and liability. And that other spouse, that other interest in the property can prove you received mail there, you brushed your teeth there, there are family photos there. So if you deliver that knowledge to the title agent, anyone worth their salt, they would not put their license on the line for something we know is defined as a primary residence. Now, I've taken the time to talk about selling. Let's talk about buying.
Yes. Okay. Before you go there, I wanted to ask you about what you talk about, the deed.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't understand what that is. Like, you could still own the house and transfer it to other people for ownership purposes. But whenever you're married, like, what does a deed means in layman's terms for people that don't, that are not in the industry and understand what this means?
So when you purchase your home, you're given a deed, and that deed, that document, delivers your interest in the property. So if, Betty, you own a home, you're going to execute a deed to me. I do not need to sign that deed. You can sign a deed over to your daughter without them knowing. The owner of the home has all the authority and the right to deliver that property to whomever they choose. So that deed can be executed in advance and can be held in escrow. For example, and this is an example I've given many people, I use celebrity divorces as an example. We know how long and drawn out they can be, but the attorneys may have one of the spouses execute a quitclaim deed, a document to transfer their interest in the property to the other person for the attorney to hold on to in their safe, because they may not plan on being back in the country for another 6 months. So let's just get it done now. So even though it's executed, that attorney's holding on to it because they know it's worthless until the divorce is final.
Got you.
Yeah.
So if a person is not married, let's say, I know we're talking about Mrs. and Mr. If they're not married and they want to deed their house to someone else, they can use this as a gift, and that's fine.
Absolutely. And I say that with the caveat of beware of tax consequences, beware of all the other consequences of coming back to almost the point of this podcast, the questions that you don't know to ask as a result of that action. And since I've never been in that scenario, I wouldn't even know how to guide somebody who chose to do that. But I have heard of tax nightmare situations, not knowing specifics about them. So I just always say, do your homework. But yes.
Because just because somebody gifts you a house doesn't mean that you're not going to be liable. That means you're liable with the house and the taxes and everything that comes with it.
Absolutely. It's just like when Oprah gave the cars away on her television show, and then everybody at the end of the year realized they had to pay taxes on them. Nothing is free. Nothing is free, my friends.
Right. Okay, so tell us what you're gonna say about when you sell a house, but then you're talking about when you buy a house.
Oh my goodness. So love is led by the heart. Love is such a wonderful and glorious thing. And the same things we love about people might be the same things we can't stand about them when we're exiting as opposed to entering. And when you're sitting there and you're in love and you're not married yet, or which scenario would you like me to use, Betty? Would you like me to use a buyer who is married but has separated? A buyer who is married, separated, and buying with a boyfriend? Or would you like me to do, let's see, a buyer who is divorcing?
A buyer who is who is divorcing. I come across so many people that are sellers, actually, they're not together, but they want to buy another house and sell this house. So maybe let's talk about the buyer who is divorcing.
So it is a heartbreaking moment to tell your clients that they are divorcing and making choices for their future on their own. And until that judge wraps his gavel, they're not making their decisions on their own. I want to cry when I tell you that I begged this woman, gave her all the information, said, just don't do it. You're buying this in cash. Just wait the 3 months for your divorce to be final. No, we're good. We're amicable. He's just like my best friend. No, we're good. We have an understanding. This is going to be fine. He's going to live in the house for just a few months too. And then when the divorce is final, to tell you that the agent is somebody who does repeat business with me and came back and said that the soon-to-be spouse will not leave the house, was later advised and given advice to realize and understand that he owns 50% of that property without having put in a dime or an ounce of sweat. And you want to know why? Because not only is she living there, he's living there. It is homestead whether or not they claim it. And no matter how many times we told her everything is amicable till it's not. It's not done. He's going to have somebody whispering in his ear. It's not going to be malicious. This becomes personal to him in a different way. And here we are. And she's going to lose a very good portion of her investment just out of pure having to pay to get it out of her way.
Wow. So, I mean, it comes to show when it comes to money and then people advising other people, because let's be honest, unless they buy cash. Was she buying cash?
She was. And that's why she had the option to wait. But she did not want to. And she had her heart set on that house. It's like saying you have your heart set on a mailbox, because guess what? It's not hers at the end of the day. And we could not get that through to her.
It's so unfortunate, because for the like, listen, if you're listening to this and the audience out there, it's so heartbreaking because it's a true wealth. Like, she basically gave half of her money to this person that she was already in the process of divorcing. Now, if it would have been a mortgage, there would have been no equity, right? So there's nothing to really fight about other than just the paperwork. Tell me about this.
If there was a mortgage, I can tell you now that the way it would have gone, because she did it cash. She had the option to wait. When you have a mortgage, I can't necessarily say you have the option to wait, because once you've already entered into the process of it, we all know your credit takes a hit. You've put yourself in a solid interest rate locked in. You've done you're already in the game, so there's no getting out of it. And in order for that to proceed, what would happen is, just like the way that we went into the first scenario, everybody's amicable. Everybody's happy. The mortgage broker is going to tell that soon-to-be ex, hey, listen, you are not on the hook for repaying this mortgage. All that you're doing by signing the mortgage is acknowledging, as part owner of this home, that she is taking a mortgage out on it. A mortgage is not the document that the lenders use when they foreclose. The note is. And the note is what is signed by the only person that is responsible to pay the mortgage back. So I want to say clearly, this is how we have a property where mommy and daddy might be helping by signing that mortgage. And even though your neighbor looks like they're living the life, there's somebody else who's responsible to pay that money back. And it's not necessarily the people that are of public record on that mortgage statement. The mortgage is the announcement to the world that all of these people own this home and all of these people are aware that there is money being taken out against the property. The property is the collateral. So we're going to go and we're going to educate Mr. Buyer, who is not putting money in. He's not having his credit checked. He's not putting an ounce of sweat in this. All he's doing is coming to the table and using a little bit of ink and signing some paper and saying, I know that she's obligated to pay this back. I know that she's buying this house and I'm connected to her. And then they'll go through with it. And then it's even worse because when it comes to doing anything like refinancing, she needs a signature.
Got you. And that's kind of like the point that I was trying to make. So if in the same scenario that you're talking about, she used cash, but has she used a loan and the house, she only owned the house for 3 months, even if he wants to get half, he only would get half of the debt, not a real equity, no real money, no real cash. She wouldn't have to buy him out of that because there's nothing to gain.
Right.
Okay.
Unless he wanted to go to an attorney, pull the plug for the divorce, he has 50% interest. And that means the loan is 100% in her name. He's not on the hook for that. So if they bought a $300,000 house and she took out a $200,000 loan and he pulls the plug on the divorce, she's still on the hook for another $150,000.
Right. That, yes, because now that's the equity, because that's the equity. If he had equity, yes. I'm talking about if he didn't have equity. But yes, on the equity portion.
When she went to go sell the house, every penny would go to satisfy the terms of the divorce or what have you.
Got you. And then the unfortunate thing for her is she paid it cash. So it's 100% equity. So if she wanted him out, she would have had to give him half of the money or sell the house.
All she had to do was wait. It is I tell people it's such a personal matter. When I speak with buyers and sellers, I am by no means making light of any of these numbers. When I say a number, it's a hit of the heart. I know. But I also know that those are the same way in which we're making decisions regarding the transaction in general. We're not using our common sense. We're letting it become a personal matter. We're letting ourselves be led by our heart. And at the end of the day, you're writing in ink, not in blood. And it's such a weighty decision to make with such consequences that 99% of the time we don't even know until we're in the middle. I have not sold my home. I've only purchased one home and I've lived in it since then. I don't know what nuances would come to me when it comes to, for example, tax of my home after I sell it, because that's not a title matter. And I am not knowledgeable of every aspect of a closing. I'm not a real estate agent. That's why people need you. That's why people need me. That's why people need accountants. And until I get into that scenario, I won't know what questions to ask unless you have an accountant on one of your podcasts and they give us this information.
This is a good point. I do know a few accountants. I would ask them to come on.
But waits for me because I don't know.
Got you. So, Angela, what advice would you give to somebody, let's say that it's single or they have a boyfriend? So what advice would you tell them that they own a house, they have a boyfriend, but they're not legally married? Like if they wanting to get married, what would you tell that person?
First and foremost, of course, you don't want to do anything with the current vesting of your deed in any way, shape, or form. You do not want to add anybody. You don't want to take anybody off. Marriage in and of itself changes the interest in the property, changes the ownership of the property. The moment you get married, you have joined your spouse in that home, and you will not have to do anything paperwork wise. Being in just a relationship with a boyfriend, the only caveat to that I can say is that they may live with you, you may have to evict them, but legally they have no consequence to your ownership of a home until you get married.
So in essence, if they do decide to get married, what we're telling them right now, if you decide to get married and you own a property, knowing when you do get married, you deciding to forfeit half of the profit of this property that you probably owned for 10, 20 years.
You should wrap up a beautiful box in gorgeous paper with a beautiful bow and say, you look up the equity of your home, divide it in half, and put a little paper in the box and say, congratulations. I've just given you.
Right. So I'm giving you my life and I'm giving you my money. So if this person have lived in this house, they bought it for 20 years ago for $250,000 and now it's worth $800,000.
Yes.
Now you're giving them whatever you pay down on this property plus whatever equity has gained. It could have been close to $400,000.
You know what? Maybe if that was part of the marital application, people would stop and think a little bit more. Or maybe if there were these huge, obvious red glitter gifts wrapped in a bow that we were giving each other, we would understand the significance of it, because we only find out when it's needed. We're already in the middle of a scenario. It doesn't help us make good decisions if we don't have all the information and the application is incomplete.
Right. No, this is so awesome. That's why I love bringing you on, Angela, because every time, even though I know these things, sometimes when you hear out loud, right? And then when you play it into real life scenario, it gives it life and it makes it very real for somebody who's listening right now and might have not known about this. I had no idea. I mean, we are in real estate and sometimes we don't know some of the nuances. Imagine people that are not in this every day. What were you going to say?
I will tell you. I purchased my home as a single woman. I got married. I'm in the middle of a divorce.
There you go.
But so I can also say, not knowing some of the information, you never go into a marriage thinking that it's not going to work. I still would have handed him that box with the document that had half the equity, because when I got married, I understood that. Just never wanted to be in this position, but here I am. And it happens. And you're not going to fully prepare for it because it's almost like throwing the towel in before the round is over. But at least have the knowledge and know up front what you're going to come up against so that you can woosah it, come to terms with it, and not fight a battle that you have no control over.
Right. And that's like we said at the beginning of the podcast, it's like, at least you can go in with your eyes wide open. One thing, like you said, you knew this. Fortunately, you knew this. You were in love and you were very sure that this was going to last. Nobody's going to a marriage seeing it fail, but you just want to. Right. But when you just don't know and you find out, when you're trying to get a divorce, it's like, by the way, you're not just losing your marriage, you're losing your house. Whatever life you thought you had, it's completely shattered. And you didn't know.
It's kind of the funny the funny thing that happens. Everybody, they say that as soon as you get the tattoo of a name of your boyfriend, the next day you walk out of the tattoo shop and they break up with you. And there it is forever. But when you were getting it, you were so excited and you were so in your feelings. And so you're not living unless you're living like that. But there are always consequences and unforeseen circumstances. So, first and foremost, make sure you know where that other spouse is, because if you can't find them, that's a whole other scenario. And, one other thing is that marriages in other countries still apply. I have been at the table with a loan officer and an agent, and the buyer was signing the documents. And I made the joke, single man, right? You're not married anywhere else. And he turned and said, well, I got married in Cuba 4 years ago, but that doesn't count. And the closing stopped there.
My goodness gracious. That's what I'm saying. You don't know what you don't know. Because obviously, had he known, he wouldn't have mentioned that. at the time.
It's not only the questions you ask, but I guess how you ask them, because he genuinely did not think he would tell everybody, I'm not married. But nobody thought to ask because you were married in another country and you don't think you are. That's not a common question either way. But yes, there's a lot to be said for, and that's maybe also why I started with, if you get married in Vegas and own a home in Florida, the laws of Florida apply.
Gotcha. Increíble, Angela. Again, No, I'm amazed. Every time you come, I just really, really, really love these stories. And because you've been in the business for so long, you have so many of them. I can have you here forever. I just really, really, really love you. I think you should have your own podcast. I think you should just
coming on yours.
This is awesome. Thank you again, Angela. I hope you have a wonderful holiday, Christmas, New Year's. And you know what? Your new beginnings, Angela. New beginnings. Thank you again for coming and bringing us the wealth of knowledge. Do you have any last minute or tell where how people can find you?
Yes. So Partners Land Services, we're in Doral. We just moved. Betty and I, we have to have coffee sometime and take a look at the offises.
Yes.
If you need me for anything, please feel free to reach out. My email is ABANEGAS like Sam at Partners Land Services, PartnersLandServices.com. And of course, if I said that too quickly or I didn't say it too clearly, you can always reach out to Betty. And
we'll put it in the comments. Also, this is what I want to let people know, because people don't know why they would need you or why would they need your information or contact you. Listen, as a consumer, us real estate agents, we can give you recommendations on who you could use. For example, these are the team that you want to have. You want to have a lender, obviously, because somebody needs to loan you the money if you don't have cash. Yeah. Then you need to have inspectors, because if you are purchasing a property, you want to make sure that you're having a good product. So you want to inspect it so you don't get something that's going to be a nightmare. Then you're also going to need somebody that's going to hold on to your escrow money. I talk about escrow all the time. This is a third party person that will hold your money that does not that the buyer or seller doesn't have it. This is at the third party. Usually it's somebody like Angela. Yeah, you're going to come to the title company, and also you're going to need somebody to close. These people are the one that handle all the transactions. If you don't have the right title company and the closing agent that represents the sale and the closing of your property, they can make or break this transaction. And the reason that I bring her on to educate you and I ask her to give the information, because you can decide who your closing person, who your title officer is. Don't depend on your real estate agent, because sometimes people have personal interest. I love Angela and she is my go-to person, but you don't necessarily have to use whoever I advise you or whoever any other real estate agent advise you. You can go ahead and do your own research, because knowledge is power, and a person, the wrong title company, will mess up your deal. Or Yes, go ahead, Angela.
I've got to say, Betty and I are both of the same ilk, and we both do this because we love our job, and I don't get paid to come on here. I enjoy being on here. And even if you want to, and I'm saying you to anybody listening or watching, want to just reach out and ask a question, I'm the kind of person that will answer your question, even if you're calling and telling me you're closing with another title company, because I'm a human being and karma's real, and being at peace with yourself is a good thing. And there's no reason not to help anybody. So even if you just have a question, feel free to give me a call. Even if you don't use me, I'd rather you be an informed person who has the right information to make a good decision.
This is so true. Like, I reach out to Angela, even for clients that are not going to close with her, because I want to make sure that they're having to make the right decisions. And that's what I want you guys to know. Angela is a true deal, guys. So if you are in the middle of a transaction and you just don't feel the warm and fuzzy feeling and you're not sure of this person or whoever recommend them to you, I'm telling you, Angela is a go-to person. She speaks Spanish and English. And the reason that I recommend Angela so much, because we're in Florida, in Miami specifically, people married and remarried and still married, and they have a boyfriend and they have a girlfriend, and they just don't know. So she knows I'm telling you guys, you don't want to be caught off-handed, and you have to know you want to have the right team by your side. Again, Angela, thank you so much for coming on and providing so much value. When you're gonna come back next year?
Again, no, and I want their lives to. I don't want their lives to be a novela. I want them to watch the novelas.
I know, got you. There you go, guys. Thank you again for tuning in to Building Connections Doral Talks. I'm your host. I will be here next week. Hopefully, I'll be here next week. I guess so that I could just say at least Merry Christmas to you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day and have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye. Bye, Angela.
Thank you.
Real quick, calling all Doral professionals, entrepreneurs, and community influencers. Are you ready to showcase your business, share your knowledge and experience with our engaged audience? Building Connections Doral Talks invites you to become a guest speaker on our podcast. Share your unique perspectives and inspiring stories with our listeners. We believe in the power of your voice in shaping the conversations right here in Doral. Click the link below to submit your information and be part of our next episode. Join us in building connections, sharing knowledge, and growing together. Don't miss this opportunity to be a featured guest on Building Connections Doral Talks. Tune in, connect, share, and grow together with Building Connections Doral Talks, reshaping the way we engage with the diverse voices of Doral, one guest at a time. Doral Talks, your voice, our community. Click the link now on the show notes, the screen, or in the comments below, or just scan the QR code to submit your information as a guest. I hope to see you soon. See you in the next podcast. Bye.